The word artist conjures up all sorts of images. For Jazz, it covers a lot of territory. Just Jazz to her friends, today's featured expert, Unapologetically, is an artist. Born in D.C., a city that used to be more appreciative of doctors, lawyers, and politicians, Jazz moved to Los Angeles for college to pursue her dream in film. Going to work as an associate producer on an NAACP winning docuseries entitled Unsung. From there, Jazz was given the opportunity to write and produce On Being, a docuseries highlighting dynamic entertainers in film and music. Happy to be doing what she loved, but simultaneously unhappy about putting that passion into someone else's vision, she decided to let go of her 9-to-5 and come into her own reign for pure artistry. No limits and no boss except for her own creativity. She went on to star in commercials and print ads for major brands like Nissan, Sony, Apple, Uber, American Express, Diesel, Black People Meat, Credit Sesame, Michelle Watches, Elle Magazine, and more. Jasmine and her fiance produced their own feature-length documentary, The Invisible Vegan, a film that chronicles Jasmine's personal experience with plant-based eating. The film also explains how plant-based eating is directly linked to African roots and how African-American eating habits have been debased by a chain of oppression stemming from slavery, economics, and modern agribusiness. You're in for quite a treat with today's featured expert, Jasmine Leyva. Stick around.
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
Well, Jazz, I hope I can call you Jazz because your friends call you Jazz. May I?
You may.
Right.
Jazz it up.
Yeah, jazz it up. Let's do that. I am so excited to be talking with you. I discovered you by way of your documentary, The Invisible Vegan, and then did some research on you. And you are a rock star. You have done so much, not only in the vegan movement, but in the film industry, in artistry, in the Black movement, everything. I mean, it's like, what have you not done? Want to start with, when did you first become a vegan and why?
Oh, you know what? I'm a horrible vegan because I don't know my vegan nursery, but I started, because me and veganism, we were like an on and off again boyfriend, where it's like I started dating veganism about probably about 17 years ago. And then there were like some fall off periods. So I can't pinpoint the exact date when it's like, it's official.
Okay. Well, for me, it's so interesting. I know when I went plant-based because it was all around inflammation. I was 64 at the time and I really had bad inflammation. So did my research and I thought, okay, I'll go plant-based and I'll give up the animal and dairy, but I am not going to call myself a vegan. You vegans are crazy people and I don't want to be a crazy person. And then about 6 months into it, I'm at the grocery store and I had, the only thing I can call it is kind of a spiritual awakening, walking by the meat department. And I literally stopped in my tracks and I started crying because I felt all the pain and suffering. And it was in that moment that I really identified as a vegan. And, so for me, I know when my date was that I gave up meat and dairy, but I don't know what the date is that I identified as a vegan. But I'm
sorry, we have to go back. Did you say you were 64 when you gave up?
Yeah, I'm going to be 68 in a couple of months. And
you are
Yeah, it must be that good living. Yeah, for real. Yeah. Well, I saw that you interviewed. Let's see, it's Babette Davis. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I aspire to be like that woman. She is
You
amazing.
are like that.
Well, thank you. And, I used to weight train and I know she weight trains, but I broke my wrist in June. And I have to tell you, it's kind of like my recovery was so unusual compared to what the doctors were used to. They said, you're like one of our best patients. It's like, well, it's probably because I don't eat meat and dairy, and so with that being said, tell me about your artistic background, because my sister is actually a fine artist and she makes a living from her artwork, but you have been an artist in many different arenas. So talk about that, if you will.
Ever since I was young, I was in the theater, and I'm talking as early as 8 years old. Like, I just always had a passion. Even when I would watch movies, I don't think I watched movies like a child. I watched movies like Siskel and Ebert, and I'm just analyzing it and looking at things that I would have done differently. And then my mom always had a video camera. So it's just kind of like it was written in the stars for me to do something involving TV and film. So I went to school for TV and film, started working in the industry on a lot of documentary series. And I always believe when you go to a 9 to 5, your reason for being there, I mean, of course, livelihood, but also learn how they run their business so you can take those skills and do it for yourself. And then you can have your own entity. So that's exactly what I did. I learned how you put together a documentary, and then I put together my own documentary.
Well, your documentary was phenomenal, is phenomenal. I've watched it a couple of times, and both times I actually was shocked with some of the information. For example, food deserts. A lot of people don't understand what a food desert is, and they don't realize that it's not just a matter of somebody saying, okay, I'm going to go vegan, because in many cases, the foods aren't available. So can you share with people what it means to be in a food desert, and what can be done to raise awareness around that and get the healthier foods into those environments?
So a food desert is a place where you don't have access to a lot of healthy foods. Like, sometimes it's not a big grocery store for miles, and the food that you are surrounded by, the produce, is not that healthy. And we really need to start looking at, like, policies need to change, because when you think about kind of old, bad produce going in some neighborhoods and perfect produce going in other neighborhoods, it really makes you think, like, who's making those decisions? And we have to start paying attention to those kind of decisions being made. And then the other, the battle with that also is when you have a group of people who've grown up without access to certain things, like, that becomes their norm. So when you go, when vegans or people from another background kind of go to these communities, telling them that they are wrong, there's kind of a disconnect, because it's just like, well, what do you mean? This is all I know. This is what my mom did, my grandmother did. So it creates, I think, tension between, privileged people who go into these communities who are well-intended, but they don't understand the problems, and then the people that are actually suffering, but don't know that they are getting the lowest rung.
Well, one of the terms that I thought was really interesting is low off the hog. And, we hear high off the hog, low off the hog. And it really is, in your film, it's very enlightening and informational about, the culture, how people are really, in a way, they're kept down by no choice of their own, and the diseases that go with that, the so much that goes into it that a lot of people don't understand. And I'd really like to have a discussion around the term white veganism, because I've heard that and I don't even know what that means. It's like, I guess there's kind of a privilege that comes with it. Can you explain what that is?
Well, to me, when I think of white veganism, I think of, kind of what used to be. Now it's getting better, but the mainstream vegan community, like, you had this certain image of what a vegan was supposed to be. It wasn't a girl like me with cornrows. It was a, skinny, younger, blonde, white, affluent. There was a certain kind of look that went with veganism. And there was also a certain kind of, not mentality, but it's like you had to be vegan for certain reasons. This idea, like, you need to be vegan for the animals. And this is why. So you had this kind of white mainstream movement pushing their priorities onto this other, these other populations who have different priorities. If you are in a food desert, if you're living in a low income community, if you're not safe when you walk home from school, unfortunately, you don't always have the mental capacity to go, oh, let me worry about these cows. It's like, because I have to worry about myself. You make me safe. You give me access to enough money to eat the healthiest diet, and I will. But those problems have to be addressed before we get mad at people for not taking on other agendas.
Well, one of the things that I found really interesting is that in certain areas, it's easier to find a 6-pack of beer and cigarettes in a fast food restaurant than it is an apple. And, and this again is something that people just aren't aware of. But one of the interviews that you did in the film was a woman who had fibroid tumors, and she's had something like 22. And actually, it was after watching your film that I realized something that my ex-mother-in-law way back when I was 21 at the time, and I was married to a Hispanic man, and his parents had come from Mexico. And so they cooked with a lot of lard, they cooked with a lot of cheese. And I actually was one of the first diagnosed cases of endometriosis. So yeah, I really am as old as I say I am. It was nearly, about 48 years ago. They didn't know what it was. And they were telling me it was in my head. And it's like, no, I've got this going on. And my mother-in-law said, do you think it's all the cheese that you're eating? And I'm like, no, that makes no sense at all. I look back now and it's probably all the cheese I was eating, but I had to have major surgery over endometriosis. And it was not until I saw your film that I really connected the dots on that. What can you tell women about what they consume and how that does impact their health, especially with like tumors and fibroids?
Our body is a car, a car runs on fuel. So you have to think about what type of fuel you're putting in your body, because it literally feeds everything. You put whatever you eat, that's going to affect your brain. That's going to affect your nervous system. That's going to affect your bones, your joints. So your reproductive organs, all the same. And even the young lady that you're speaking about, her name's Erica Taylor. She wasn't able to conceive children. And then she switched to a plant-based diet. And then in her early 40s, she was finally able to conceive a child after changing her diet. So just think about, someone who desperately wanted a child. Like if someone had gave her this information sooner, like, hey, just start putting different things in your body. It might not have reached the extreme level that it got to.
Well, it's so interesting because right now there seems to be this real divide in a lot of areas in our life, politically, religiously, spiritually, between communities of people, between races. I mean, it's just this big divide that's going on. And a lot of people are so adamant on the fact that they're not going to give up their meat and they're not going to give up their dairy. And yet the evidence is in that it can give them a much better quality of life. What do you do personally to raise awareness? Because I know for me, sometimes I get so frustrated and it's like, I just want to hit them on top of the head and say, wake up. But then I look at how long it took me to get there. So what is your, if you will, formula for success for raising awareness?
Oh, so I always try, I just remain humble. I always remember that I'm the CEO of my own person and no one else. And I always look at other people like, they haven't watched the documentaries that I've watched. They haven't read the books that I've read. They haven't spoken to the people I've spoken to. Most of the sources of authority in their lives, whether it be their pastor, their mom, their teachers, the president of the United States, like all of these sources are telling them what they're doing is okay. So I don't take it personal when they reject my way of life. But I will say this, I am never forceful. When people come to my home, I just make sure I have really good food around so they can see, oh, okay, going vegan doesn't mean eating nasty food. If people ask me about my lifestyle, I let them know. And even when people try to argue with me, because I feel like you almost like become the crazy vegan that people think you are when you get baited into those debates. So when people say like, no, meat, and they have their argument, I just let them know, I'm like, okay, if that is working for you, I don't want to challenge that. And I think it's that spirit that people see in me. And then they're just like, you know what? I think I want to try what she's doing because I like where she's at mentally. So.
Well, I love the discussion in your film about for men not having to take the little blue or yellow pill. And it's interesting because like in the Game Changer, that was the one thing that with a lot of men changed their whole perspective. It's like, oh, if I don't have to take the little blue pill, my gosh, I better go plant-based. But, how much of an influence has that been with some men that you know, as far as like their virility and their ability to, if you will, perform? And I remember you laughed when that one gentleman was talking about it, but it's like men have two brains and they usually think with their smaller brain, and it's like, so how do, and I mean that with a lot of love and compassion for men, but how do you, what can you tell us about that for men?
So when I was putting together the film, and I'm thinking about reasons that people should consider veganism, of course people should consider veganism because, you don't want billions of innocent animals dying. Of course, you don't want climate change to be progressed. But at the end of the day, you got to think about what is it that people really care about. And I know men, and they care about sex, and they care about their penises.
Yes,
so it's just like, so I just thought that was a great angle. I'm just like, listen, there's scientific evidence that, when you get an erection, it's a blood flow thing. If you eat food that clogs your arteries, it is going to affect your blood flow. So if you want to bring the best soldier to war the next time you're with a woman, then you should definitely consider a plant-based diet.
Oh, I love that. Bring the best soldier to war. Maybe we'll call this episode The Best Soldier to War. But, and what's interesting is that when I did have endometriosis, it turns out I couldn't have kids because they had to do surgeries 4 years apart. And the doctor said, your chances of having babies is like none to nil. And being married to the oldest man in a Hispanic family, that was a disgrace to the family. We actually got divorced over it because I couldn't have kids. And it was all about his manliness, but it's okay. It's okay because it all worked out great. I mean, there was a lot of things that got revealed through the whole process. So it was all good. But, you actually just released a new book, which I love the title of the book. Let me see if I can say it right. Queen Vegania and Princess Apple, The Magical World of Vegetables. And I have to say, I love that because I think about the Cookie Monster and how a lot of us grew up on the Cookie Monster saying, cookies are great, cookies are great. And that was the food manufacturers that were subsidizing those TV programs. So tell us about your new book.
So, I did The Invisible Vegan because I wanted to raise awareness in my community. So people like me, my family members, my friends, they could understand this in a way that was palatable for them. So I wanted to do the same for our children. The Black Panthers, historically, they came up with the free breakfast program because they understood that, children can't thrive academically if they're going to school hungry. So I want to build upon that. And I would take it further to say children will have a hard time thriving if they're not properly nourished, if they're super doped up on sugar, if they don't have any nutrients. Like, how can you focus if your brain isn't given the fuel to work efficiently? So, I wanted to give parents something that they can read their children so their kids can get excited about healthy eating and understand the benefits of vegetables.
I love that because it's so true that when children can't get proper nutrition, their brains don't function right. They don't learn as well. And what are your plans for the book besides obviously parents getting the book, but are there plans to get it in the school system, into the library system?
Yes. So it's so funny. You're reading my mind. I just reached out to a friend today because I do want to get it into the school system and I want to come out with counterparts for different kind of children. Like, this one focuses on, a mother and daughter. So one that focuses on, a father and son, maybe one that focuses on a sibling set and both parents, and just also showing different upbringings too. I think that's also important when trying to push these narratives, just trying to represent as many people as you can.
I love that. I see sponsors in your future. I see some good stuff with that because something has to change, because when we look at the health of our kids, what's happening, that kids are getting adult diseases at the age of 3, 4, and 5, and obesity. And, it is something that is so shocking. And yet people are choosing to ignore it, which really leads into the next question about the medical profession and why they refuse to actually educate people more on a plant-based vegan lifestyle. Why do you think that is?
one, it's two reasons. Like one, it's about money. A healthy population doesn't need as much healthcare. A healthy population doesn't need as many pharmaceutical meds. So the incentives to help people get healthy aren't there. And then second, I think that the medical industry is in denial, because if they were to entertain the fact that a lot of these diseases, heart disease, diabetes, could be reversed with just changing up your lifestyle, then that would beg the question, well, what have you guys been doing what have you guys been telling us for the past century? Like, it's been kind of like a crock of bleep. So
it
I think
definitely has.
The evidence is there, but I think they need to hold on to it in order to, I don't know, like it's a pride thing at this point.
And it's amazing because it's so evident to those of us that have been doing the research, and the further that I know I go into understanding what a good diet is all about, the more shocked I am at the lies we've been fed. You can look at some declassified reports about, MK Ultra, for example, and the study that was done with the African-American men that started, I think it was in the 40s and ended in the 70s, around syphilis. I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking what our government has actually done. We could get into some conspiracy theories here, but we won't go there. But we may have a good time with that. So let me ask you this: with all of your accomplishments, you've been in a lot of commercials. You've been, definitely an artist, a documentary producer. You have so much that you've done. What do you see coming for your future?
What do I see coming for my my future? The things that I see coming, I definitely see more films that touch people and help the human condition. I definitely see that. I know there are going to be more acting jobs. I know there are going to be more books. And then there's also going to be a certain level of unpredictability. Because I think life, if you have this grand plan where everything is like planned out, you don't leave room for new adventures. Mm-hmm. And new adventures are what light me up. So like over the summer, I went to Bali and became a certified mermaid. Like it was so random.
Wait. A certified mermaid? Okay, tell me about that. And then we'll get back to the documentaries. That one intrigues me.
Okay, I went to Bali, and I bought a one-way ticket to Bali because I was just like, you know what? I need to just do something different, new environment. And I bought a one-way ticket to Bali. And I just decided, you know what, I'm leaving LA Jasmine at home, and I'm just gonna let Bali just take me. And I just got into stuff, and I saw Bali Mermaid School. And at first I laughed when I saw it, but I was like, you know what, when I was young, I always wanted to be a mermaid. So then I signed up for Bali Mermaid School. I got training on how to swim with the fin and how to do underwater modeling. Before you know it, I was in the ocean, free diving to sunken ships amongst the Nemos with my mermaid tail. And then I got my certification.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. That's incredible. So I've never heard of that. You've left me speechless on that one. But getting back to documentaries, if you ever decide to do one on older people and veganism and plant-based, I'd love to be an advisor on the film, because it shocks me as I'm a couple of years away from 70, which blows my mind. It's absolutely blows my mind. But I look at the way that a lot of people my age are living, and they've given up, and they don't think that it can be any different. What can you recommend to people who really, they know that they need to make a change, but they don't want to make a dramatic change or a drastic change? They just want to try things in degrees. What would be some of the first steps that people could take?
You know what, as with anything, I think, habits form. It takes, weeks, sometimes months for one habit to form. Veganism can actually be in a holistic lifestyle. That can be a whole wide, list of habits. So I would say, do not try to tackle everything overnight. The people who say, oh, I went vegan overnight, that's great for you, but that's not everyone else. Try little things. Just go, you know what? Milk. Let me get accustomed to almond milk. Whatever you use regular milk in, start putting almond milk in there. And then once you master that, then go, you know what? Let me try to find another source of cheese. Go through, try diet, try follow your heart. Once you find something that's working, just okay, I can do without cheese. Then maybe try to take beef out of your diet. Just go, you know what? I'm going to replace all the beef. Then once you master it, take out chicken. So I think that's slow and steady wins the race.
In your family, when you made these changes, did you get pushback from your family because of the culture, or did people say, okay, that makes sense? What was the response you got?
I think, because I came from, my mom is from the South, so I come from Southern cooking. I grew up eating, we'd have chitlins, chicken, like all these foods that people knew me to eat. So when I said like, oh, I'm eating vegan stuff and vegetables, everyone is like, they think it's a joke. They think it's hilarious. And people didn't really take it seriously. I just moved to Los Angeles. So it just felt like, oh, she moved to LA to become an actor. Now she's eating this Hollywood diet. That was the diet nonsense. But what ended up happening, which I didn't, I didn't see coming, was it wasn't until years later, even after the film and everything, before I know it, I go home and my mom has her vegan cakes and almond milk. And then same thing, like my cousin, he tells me like, hey, Jasmine, do you have any vegan channels I could subscribe to? Like someone I never would have thought would go vegan. Same thing with my aunt. She was diagnosed as diabetic, pre-diabetic. So she said, you know what, let me try what my niece is talking about. And she's up in her 70s. She tried it and then her blood work got better. So again, and it wasn't me yelling at my family. It wasn't me lecturing them. It was just me existing. And it almost felt like the marketing rule of 7. They say when someone sees something for the first time, they don't necessarily buy it, but it takes 7 times for them to actually go like, okay, I'm gonna try it now. I think the same thing can be said about veganism. Like people, when they're just exposed to it, it's just like, that's stupid. But after enough exposure, it's like, let me try what Jasmine's talking about.
Oh, I love that because, like when I started plant-based, I gave myself 7 days to feel better and have the inflammation minimized. I thought, okay, it'll minimize a little bit in 7 days. In 2 days, it literally disappeared. And I haven't had it since that time. And so I thought, okay, I'll try it for another 7 days and see what else happens because I had dropped like 5 or 6 pounds. I was about 40 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I've been a yo-yo dieter all my life. I don't diet anymore. I eat plant-based, pretty close to whole food as much as possible. And it was like, I did it in degrees, like what you said. But that whole thing of calling myself a vegan, it was like, I resisted that. It's like, I'm not going to do it. And now it's like, I have a shirt that says vegan AF and and I have the Vegan Visibility Show, the Plant-Based Eating for Health show. Speaking of which, I want to remind people that you're listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast show. And I'm talking with Jazz, who is the producer and director of The Invisible Vegan. She's got quite a resume. This is amazing. How can people find you, Jazz?
Oh, I'm around all the typical places. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I mean, I'm on TikTok when I'm like on TikTok, Twitter, and yeah. Okay.
And what is your web address?
It is theinvisiblevegan.com.
Okay. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And as you look at the future of where things are going, specifically, we could look at COVID, and it has been proven. I just read a study that people who are vegan, who eat a healthy vegan diet, that they have 73% less chance of coming up with complications if they're diagnosed with COVID. What do you see as the future of, with our health, with the vegan movement? Where do you see things going?
I feel like, this vegan health movement, like now it's catching on as a trend. And I'm seeing like being holistic, turning to herbs. All of these things are really like becoming, fun to people. So I see 2 things that scare me. I mean, I see 2 things. One scares me. One good thing is I see everybody kind of getting on the plant-based train. And now, the situation with the climate is getting so bad that you have like China, they're changing their whole food system. Even Biden is putting $1 billion into sustainable farming practices. So like they're being forced to try something else. So on the one hand, I see us going in this beautiful, everybody eating a plant-based diet direction. Now, on the other hand, I'm like, I feel like they're going to find a way to start cooking and making a bunch of food in laboratories. So it's not going to be, meat is the problem, but processed, man-made, non-food will be the new problem. So those 2 things. And Both, little column A, little column B.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the movie many, many years ago called Soylent Green. And it's kind of like we're moving into that where it's processed, and it's if you've not seen the film, you've got to see the film. And speaking of films, other than your own documentary, what other documentaries, 2 or 3 documentaries, can you advise to people? Because I definitely recommend that people watch The Invisible Vegan. I mean, that one was such an eye opener for me. What are some other documentaries that you would recommend to people?
Okay. So recently, John Lewis, I do a lot of panels with him. He's kick-ass, badass vegan. He put out They're Trying to Kill Us. And I really enjoyed it. You know, it highlighted a lot of the Black male experience. I definitely think that's worth tuning into. The movie Vegucated. I enjoyed Marissa Wolfson. I think she did an incredible job with that film. And it comes from a lot of the people in the film are new to veganism. So if you're an audience member, most likely you'll be able to relate to one of the people in the film. And then I thought Game Changers was a smart move. Like, we're in this whole era of fitness where everybody wants to be, you know, the next Olympic champion somehow, some way. So this kind of speaks to people with that, who are really big on athletics and who want to get into it for more physical reasons.
I love that because, definitely They're Trying to Kill Us. That was another eye opener for me. And the Game Changers, that one, I think what I really appreciated about that is it was something a lot of people could relate to more on the fitness level than anything. And I have a friend that he went pro after he went vegan in bodybuilding, and he's built like a Greek god. I mean, and he works for it. I mean, no doubt. But I asked him, I said, now, when you are dieting down for a competition, is it difficult? He goes, actually, no. He goes, because I'm so healthy that it doesn't take as much as it used to when he was a meat consumer. So what books would you recommend to people?
I would probably recommend the books that got me started. I read Sister Vegan, and I love that book because it had, you know, I'm a Black woman. It had multiple essays from Black women about, you know, different aspects of the vegan diet. So I really appreciated that. It was that one, and probably By Any Greens Necessary by Tracy McQuarter that I really enjoyed.
Okay. And
there's one I'm reading now. It's called, and I'm mad that I can't think of the author on the spot. It's called Black Food Matters. And, you know, it's not necessarily all about veganism, but it talks about plant-based eating, but it talks about just Black food in general. And great book.
Now, when you say Black food, are you talking about the culture of the Black community, or
the culture? Yeah, the culture of food in our community and the politics behind the food that we eat in our community.
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's pull back the curtain and what really is going on with the politics.
So one thing that I didn't know, you know, things like I guess back in the 60s, and it brings up DC, you had people were allowed to kind of pedal push their own dinners up along the street. So you had these, you know, kind of low income communities. The people there still had that entrepreneurial spirit and were able to thrive on their own. But even things like that were taken from them, where it's just like, oh no, this is the way they're gaining wealth. We got to stop this. And just how, you know, what effect it has on a people when their food ways are taken away from them.
It's shocking. The more that we learn about what our government has done, the more shocking it becomes. And the more I just go, I can't trust either side, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. Can't trust them. And so we have to really, if you will, we have to fend for ourselves, and we have to be willing to stand out there and educate people. And I love your take on it, because I'm not always so patient. And, you know, you kind of gave me a nice hit over the head with that, with TikTok. I've been going into some vegan spaces, and there's always the one who says, well, I'm eating a hamburger with cheese and bacon right now. And I love, you know, whatever they do. And of course I react to that, and it's like, you idiot. And so maybe I should try a gentler approach. It might get further along. So if you were to pick one hero in the vegan movement, anybody, who would that one hero be?
Oh, one hero in the vegan movement. Mm-mm-mm. That is a good one. One hero. You know what? I'll go with Gwenna Hunter. She runs Vegans of LA, Vegans for Black Lives Matter, and she worked with Vegan Outreach. With me, a hero, that's someone that, I look up to and respect. And in order for me to look up to you and respect you, I have to know you as a human being. I have to know a little bit about your humanity. And being around her, I learned that what she stands for is also in line with the compassionate, beautiful person she is as a human being. And I think she represents veganism very well.
I love that. I love that. Well, Jazz, this has been delightful. And in closing, what are your final thoughts?
I want to leave with this. Things that you put on your plate, a lot of people think those are small decisions. My aunt, her blood was taking her in a direction towards degenerative disease. And she thought about my lifestyle. She tried it, and it changed the course of her life in a direction that's disease-free. So when you put things on your plate, just remember other people are watching you, and you could be making the difference between whether or not the kid next to you or the elder person beside you lives a long, healthy life to 100 because they see what you're doing, or their life is cut short at 50 because they see poor habits that they want to partake in. So please lead by example and know that these choices can be life or death.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Lead by example. And may we all lead by example. This is Kathleen Gage with the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Thanking you for tuning in. And please leave a review and a rating and subscribe to this channel wherever you may be listening or watching. I want to wish you a happy day, a happy night, a happy middle of the night, and go out, be compassionate, live healthy, and do the right thing. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.